anybody new, I always like to start out with something a little Socratic. I'm not going to do the whole thing like that, so no fears, but does anybody know what that thing is? It's an actual thing. It was taken by our Hubble telescope. Actually happened. It is a supernova. They had made some improvements to the Hubble and they spotted this thing. They said, yeah, now we know what a supernova is. And I'm, well, what the hell is a supernova? It's a large explosion that takes place at the end of a star's life cycle and has a tendency at the end of it to produce either other stars or galaxies. And I saw that and I thought, oh my God, it is the story of retail and stores this century. In a nutshell, we had a retail nova or a retail supernova, which took me a long time, but it's one word, happened to us in a lot of different ways, and I'm going to talk about that today. So real quickly, an agenda, I'm going to talk about this whole blown to atoms aspect that happened. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We've been talking about it ourselves, for at least 15 years. I'm going to talk about also like a confluence of disruptors that happened. Some are obvious, some that were talked about today on today's stage. Another one I think is a little less obvious, a little bit more of a disruptor than we're really giving it credit for because we've got so much on our plate right now in terms of what's going on. And then if I want you to write down way back there, like 2 words at all today, it's that. Get local. And for the first time, I think in retail in probably 30, 40 years, maybe even 50 years, that term is more important than it ever has been before. Has something to do with the disruptor, so I'll talk about that too. And then I'm going to give you a homework assignment called the 15-minute city. And if you haven't already read about it, you should definitely, as store people, developers, designers, you should really start to understand like what the 15-minute city is all about right from the get-go. First, a commercial. I'm here with Jeff Arps. Jeff is right over there. We're with a company called WD Partners. We are global. Our tagline is innovation at scale. And so it's 2 different things, but that's really true. Some of you guys in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. We can think of something from scratch, and then we have the ability to scale. We can do them independently, we can do them together. And it's services like that. So we, on the innovation side, strategy and design are one thing, and then architecture and engineering, obviously, and digital is a component for everything. One of the most important balls that's up there right now is operations. So simple thing that we've been talking about also for maybe more than a decade is buy online, pick up in store, but how do you do it? It's easy to say, I got to do buy online, pick up in store. Or it's easy for Walgreens to say, yeah, we're going to do delivery, but holy crap, like how do I do that? Third party, do I do it myself? How do I hire drivers, insurance, and all that? So our operations division's been doing really well. And we work with a lot of really fine brands, hopefully more in this room than I think that there are. But anyway, that's the end of the commercial. So I'm going to talk about blown to atoms first. So go back to 1999, and that seems like 20,000 years ago. There was a single star, that was our star. Everybody in this room, we bought merchandise, we put it in that star. It was the star of the show. That's what we had to do. We had logistics just flowing into this place. As we opened more of them, retail looked like a star. But little did we know it was at the end of its life cycle. Not retail in general. Retail is going to just change. It's going to, like a supernova, go into something else. Nonetheless, boom, we had that happen by 2005. And this is only a few things, but like dark stores, DTC, delivery, social, live stream, mobile, e-com, all those things happen within like a 6, 7, 8 year period on a very, very large scale. And it was consumer driven. So you didn't have a choice. You had to follow what they were doing. But we still had stores. And back in that slide that I just showed, we still had stores. And I remember thinking like in 2008 and 2009, everybody at work said, well, stores is still a predominant part of our business because it's like 12% of the business is e-com. So what big of a deal is that? I mean, stores are still a big thing. We're still opening stores. We had the recession. That slowed that down a little bit, but that happened to stores. Now, by 2020, we had a supernova happen to stores as well. So then stores became all kinds of things like pop-up stores, showroom stores, mobile stores, experience stores. We started talking about this store's got to be an experience store. This store is a store in an indoor mall, which is an old thing, and an outdoor mall. But all of a sudden, stores exploded too. So, but why did that happen? And to us, here's a real scientific drawing for you there. So if you took a look at stores, one of the main things that happened that we all know about is e-commerce, right? So e-commerce put this pressure on stores to start to create this supernova later, and it looked kind of like that. You know, in the beginning we were thinking, oh, it's nothing, it's some bookstores and some other things, and it just keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. So the last thing I read, we did a study ourselves, and we asked consumers, 2,700 consumers, which we'll talk about later, but I don't have this slide in there. In the future, how are you predominantly going to shop, online or in stores? And we've asked that 1,000 different ways in a bunch of different studies, decided to simplify it. Now, after the pandemic is over, how are you going to shop? It's your predominant form of shopping. 68% said online. And I've seen similar numbers, 64 from McKinsey, a few other people in the high 60s. Somebody mentioned today that it was somewhere around 65, 66% going forward. That's by far, that's 3 times the number than we saw before. So forget about that little chart. Here's something from McKinsey, so secondary research for us. Just in a 1-year period, e-com increased 35%. And we've got Cameron here. It's a follow-up for me, so I told him I'd give him a segue, but here's one of them. Take a look at Amazon there. 62% increase in about a year's time. Online pure plays, the same thing. Because of the pandemic, that happened. There you go. So e-com. All right, enough about that. But then we have stores. So we have this tremendous pressure on stores. Like the speed and convenience and ease of e-commerce. Like how do we do that in stores? So we adopt. We have buy online, pick up in store. We have delivery. We have, you know, like anything that you want to do where you're going to walk out. We're going to have technology where you can walk out, pay and walk out, right? That's one thing, but the one thing that we're not really talking about is this, and work from home. So we say, yeah, we've got work from home, and like how do we adjust to that? But there still seems to be a dominant thought process, I think, with a lot of CEOs that, hey, we're coming back to the office. And we have a lot of friends at Cushman & Wakefield and a lot of the real estate companies, and they're really hoping for that, but it does not appear that way. But work from home is something else. And this is a little complex. It's a little bit of an eye chart. Actually hard for me to see in either case. But on the left is CEOs, 500 CEOs from McKinsey. On the right is employees, 5,000 employees, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. So you look at work from home 4 days a week, pre-pandemic from CEOs, you're talking about 92%. They're saying, yeah, you know, and why would you think otherwise when you think about it, right? I mean, everybody's going to come back to work. Everybody's going to work from home. We've got some people, because of the industry that they're in or the involvement in our company that they're in, that are going to not work from home. We're pretty much 92%. But look then over at consumers. Consumers at the same period of time are down to 37%. And that's after the pandemic. And then so we've got a hybrid model there too. But you can see the difference between both parties. And both parties are looking at a hybrid model, I think, the majority of the time, and for the first time. And then across all industries, we're probably the latter industry down there, but if you look at the blue number, so you're looking at 70-some% working from home, a lot more than we were before. I mean, that's really something to think about. Think about the ramifications of that. What does it mean for real estate? What does it mean for me even getting in my car and driving? I rented a car this week, and I was thinking, this is the most god-awful process I've been through in my life. It was like they never rented a car before in their life. So you start to do things that you look at differently. And I was telling my boss, it's like the genie got let out of the bottle, right? I work from home 2 or 3 days a week. This is great. I can take my kids to school. I can go to the grocery store for 15 minutes. I can come back and I can finish the job. I can even be on the phone while I'm at the grocery store, and I could do that. Everything, right? The genie got out of the bottle. Everybody realizes that work from home is completely different. Changes everything. Changes the way I think about things. Changes the way I think about my kids. I get to spend more time with them. Then we asked consumers, and I'm going to show you the vitals on this study, because the basis of this of my presentation is this study. Who among you expect to go back to or not to go back to work 5 days a week? Will you not go back to work for 5 days a week? How many of you? That is the first time I've ever seen that number. For years and years of doing research, 100%, 2,700 people, not one of them said, I expect to go back to the office 5 days a week. I mean, that's a pretty phenomenal stat. So boom, work from home. So now we've got double pressures on this element that we're all involved with. We were saying up here today, this is our career, right? We've got double pressures on that thing, and that's why it blew up into something that's totally different, and I think something that we really need to think about, like going forward. So here's the research. Can't spend a lot of time on it. Happy to talk to you about it afterwards, but basically, center of the bell curve in just about every element: age, gender, income. You will notice we didn't go below 25,000. That's why you're not going to see a lot of people saying, below 25,000, I'm going back to the office. So work from home. I'm just going to spend a second here with our research on work from home. So we asked people, who among you and how often were you required, how many of you, one vote each, were required to go back to work at home? 65%, almost 2/3 of people were required over the course of the last year and a half to work from home. Again, so you get this learned behavior, genie out of the bottle, whatever you want to call it. All of a sudden I'm at home for that much time, and I never was before. And then how often? Same year. So 50% of the time, 83% of people said over the course of 2020, I was at home 50% of the time, 83% of the 2,700. That's a lot. That's extremely high. Then 2022 going forward, what percent do you expect to work from home? So 60% said at least 50% of the time. So 2-3 days a week, I'm going to be working from home. 40% said 25% of the time, so at least 2 days a week. You think about this. I mean, you're developing this entire neighborhood of your prospective customers that are staying at home, right? And then back to that single number there. In the office full time, 0, none. I'm never going back full time. The impact of that is kind of like this. And I could have done a build slide here, but again, a little bit short on time. So 2 things. We found out 68% of the people and a lot of other secondary research said we're going to predominantly shop online. Okay, but when you do go to a store, what type of store or where are you going to go to when you shop in a store? Good news is, like, I'm never going to shop in a store is down to 4%. So really, people are going to shop in stores. And I think we all know that stores are, everybody's read it, stores are dead. No, they're not. They're never going to be dead. They're just going to change. Now we're starting to think maybe they're going to have to start to change where they are, actually. So 11% indoor mall. I'm not going to touch on that too long. Again, we have friends at Cushman and a lot of other places. 11% in an indoor mall, that's miserable. Outdoor malls and these other things like city streets being like, okay, I'm going to go into Manhattan and shop in these special stores, anywhere from like 16.4% all the way down to like 15.6%, somewhere in that range for all 3 of those. But obviously the big number right there is, I want to stay in my neighborhood and I want to shop in my neighborhood. So the question becomes, for all of us, because we're in real estate, development, construction, we got to get stores built. Like some drugstores are already somewhat in neighborhoods anyway. Convenience stores are kind of in neighborhoods anyway. Coffee shops really kind of had the idea. But what is the power of a neighborhood? And how does a neighborhood get developed to the point where we can get customers who now at home, and there's more and more and more stats on work from home than the ones that I just showed you, obviously. They're at home a lot. They're home 4 or 5 days a week. And I don't know about you guys, I had a chance to like walk around my neighborhood with new eyes like I've never had before. I'm walking up and down the street and we have like this little strip center of stores there and I'm thinking, God, they're awful. I mean, they're really awful. There's, like a women's tennis shop for I don't know who, and, like a children's clothing store. So What we decided to do when we saw that 37% number was, let's ask these 2,700 consumers, what do you want to see there? So we gave them 8 different options, which we thought were pretty varied. And let's just give us a road to kind of head down so that next year when I'm at RetailSpaces, or maybe when I'm at the work conference in November, we can talk about it a little bit more. But let's give them 8 concepts and see what they say about them. So if you were going to shop in a store locally, what would you prefer to see? First one, mobile stores. Now the 16%, I got to pause here. Top 2 boxes. So you understand what top 2 boxes are. It's geek research geek language. We ask consumers on a scale of 1 to 7. These are only the percents of 6 and 7s. So very much so and really, really so, right? 6 and 7s. So 16% were top 2 boxes. If you think about a bell curve, the way it would roll through 1 through 7, you should probably have 20% on each side. And then you're going to have the majority of people sort of in the middle of that. So when you get 16%, that means that the bell curve facing you has shifted a little bit to the left. You start to get over 20%, 25, 30%, then it's shifted to the right. People are pretty enthusiastic about it because it's only the top 2 boxes. Enough on that. So mobile stores, not so much. Experience stores and all this conversation about we're going to have like these great experience stores like the Nike store that's on there and the Vans Superstore and all that stuff. In my neighborhood, nah, maybe not so much. And I can't see an experience store in my neighborhood. Pop-up store, now the number gets interesting. The bell curve shifts. We got 30% in top 2 boxes. Pop-up stores, I frankly thought that this was going to be a lot higher than it is. But 30%, pretty good, something to think about. Showroom stores, which personally, for WD Partners, we've tested showroom stores in a lot of different ways, and we've got higher numbers than that. But that's still a pretty good number. And another thing on top 2 boxes that we've learned is you get around 40%. You move that bell curve over that far, that's definitely something that you should test. If you throw a brand new idea out there or an old idea out there, and you get over 40%, you should test it. 50%, that test is going to work. So if you were thinking about testing it in 2 or 3 stores, you should think about testing it 25 or 30. And if it's 60%, you're way behind the customers and just roll it out. So 33%, pretty good. This is an interesting one, which I'll touch on later, but InHome Services, and I know Walmart tested this in InHome Services. Geek Squad is obviously extremely successful at this, but there's some likability in terms of InHome Services. So we drill down a little bit further and I'll talk about it. But InHome Services, 35%, you're getting to the point that if you're a brand, and I don't care who you are, you might want to think about what is it that we have that we could get into people's houses, because it's another way to almost instantly become local. If you could install something, if you could repair something, if you could do something like that, that's a pretty good number. But you're going to have to test it to really kind of get that information. Now we're getting somewhere. I think 50% in dark stores. So we're finding out from these 2,700 consumers that if you're going to open a store in my neighborhood and it's a dark store, I'm cool with that. So pickup and delivery only, I really don't care about that. That sounds really good to me. 50%, like I said, is a test that's going to work. And as you guys know, I mean, there's tests out there now with just about everybody who's trying dark stores. As a matter of fact, Taco Bell was saying we're going to take the stores that we're going to open and a certain percentage of them and make them dark stores. So they know the number as well. Drill down on dark stores. So we ask consumers, well, if you're going to have a dark store in your neighborhood, what would it be? Big box stores. So that's Walmart, Target, guys like that, Best Buy. If you had a big box dark store in a neighborhood, it would definitely work. You're talking about 80% of people are top 2 boxes for a big box dark store in their neighborhood. I thought that was kind of interesting. Even more interesting to me is on the very bottom, if you're a local brand, I don't want you to be dark at all. I'm going to go shop in your store. So there's a store that people are going to shop in, is a local store in my neighborhood. Also interesting for our friends in the department store business, 35% is a pretty good number. You should try it, and obviously some of them are. So dark stores. Here's the big message to me out of this whole research. I was waiting for this when we were looking at the numbers, and I'm like, there it is. So if you are a big brand and you're going to drop, a small store in my neighborhood, thumbs up. That one's really good, 52%. So think about how far that bell curve is shifted over to the right. In terms of positivity, consumers are really accepting of that. And obviously we have a little Target right there. First thing I thought when I saw that was, well, I guess Target knew that a long time ago. Because Target now has, I think they're way ahead of the game. They're way ahead of Walmart on this. They've got little stores in neighborhoods to the tune of 100, maybe more. I don't know, maybe you guys know more than me, but I think 100 to 150, maybe, small stores. So they're rocking and rolling, small stores in neighborhoods. And then Nordstrom, they tested one store on Melrose in LA, which is, kind of a neighborhood, I guess, shopping center in a neighborhood, but now they're testing 6 more, mostly within the state of California. And then the winner of them all was a local brand in a local store. And that seems kind of obvious, but think about this. If you're a big brand and you could act like a local brand, you could go into neighborhoods that way too. And there's some examples of that as well. Almost to the tune of 60%. So just to wrap it up, experience stores, mobile stores, maybe not so much. Showroom stores, pop-up stores, worth a test, perhaps. In-home service, something to really think about. You can get local right now. You can get into somebody's house. Pretty much good enough approval to test, I would say. Then the big winners are dark stores. I can have a dark store in somebody's neighborhood. I won't care because I'm coming home from work. I'm going to drive right by it, something I bought at Target, whatever, and I can pick it up. And a big brand going into a local neighborhood also. So in terms of simple questions, we asked them, are you going to shop more local now? Yes or no? Yes, 88%. And that's about as high a number as I think I've ever seen, other than that 100% number. You get around 90%. 90% of the people are saying, oh yeah, I am definitely going to shop more local. Why? They're at home. They're at home. They're at home 5 days a week. They could be at home more than that a week. So they take a break. They walk around the store. Where's the restaurants? Where's the shops? Where are they? Why haven't retailers moved or even started to think about that? And they kind of have to an extent. So again, there's 2 things to write down. It's get local. And it's a little early, obviously, but I think there's plenty of time to investigate some of those things. And there's plenty of time for us too to dive down further, I think, into some of the answers that we got from this test. But just so you know, and as most of you do know, it is happening. Target did it. QSR, ladies and gentlemen, QSR has always been local. And you wonder why QSR and Taco Bell did so well. They're in the neighborhoods. So somebody doesn't have to go anywhere because they're at home. Taco Bell's right there in the neighborhood. Short delivery service, drive-through service. 80% of the business is already through the drive-through. Just think about it. The Taco Bell had 20% of their business to solve. Abercrombie had almost 100% of their business to solve. So QSRs have always been local. And then I thought about this. If you're going to be a big brand and you're going to get local, and being local is really important, why not, if you're 7-Eleven, do a convenience store like this? This is a store called Foxtrot in Chicago. So why not really kind of gear up and say, I'm going to go into a certain neighborhood, Evanston in Chicago, and I'm going to open up these quote-unquote 7-Eleven stores with a little bit different name, and it's going to look like that. Nike's doing local stores as well. Ulta has always been local. Ulta is in my neighborhood. There's an Ulta just about everywhere. They open up in these small towns in Ohio that I've never even heard of, and they'll open a store there because there's a makeup desert there. Or somebody has to get in a car and drive like 30 miles to a mall to do it. Starbucks has always been local. I think Warby Parker is another one. And talking to Warby Parker at this conference a few years ago, they said they look at their concentration of online shoppers, no matter where they are, and they drop a store in the middle of it. And if you think about where Warby Parker is, for the most part, they're on street level, some places that you would not normally expect, not necessarily the mall. Victoria's Secret just announced that they're going to open 4 stores outside of indoor malls. So what does that tell you? They're starting to think about it as well. And this is one of my favorites, Express Edit. I think I might have named it a little bit differently, de-emphasize the Express a little bit because there's so much importance on local. But look at that store. I mean, that doesn't look like an express store, and it's in somebody's. We have one in our neighborhood. There's another 6 that are opening across the country, which tells me that it worked pretty well. And then this is Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and I had to take this picture because I started to think, that's gorgeous. That's where retail is going to be. Because I'm going to be at home. I'm going to run down to the coffee shop when I get a little break. Maybe I'm going to go somewhere and have lunch. Maybe I could pass some retailers on the way that aren't necessarily the retailers that are in malls at all. And one last thing, I think on that, in terms of like going into stores, should stores have more in-home services? So we asked them, we drilled down on the in-home number because it was 35%. So we asked them, should brands have that? Should some brands have it? Should all brands have in-home services? Not all brands should have in-home services was the answer. Almost 70% said some should, but the interesting part of that, remember I told you that there's 6 and 7 to make up top 2 boxes? 43% were 7. So 43% of the 2,700 people gave, you should be in-home services a 7. So I think that that's really something to think about, and that's why I'm talking about it. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think we need to do a little bit more research. But you know, when I first heard that Walmart was going to deliver my groceries, I said, you're not going to come in my house and put bananas in my tray or anything like that, but maybe it's something else. But at the same time, I'll invite Geek Squad in anytime. So it's probably a particular service, but that's a really high number in terms of acceptance. Okay, so that's that, and then here's the homework assignments of a 15-minute city. And basically it was started by this guy, Carlos Moreno. That's what a 15-minute city is. Basically, everything sort of looks like that. And if you think about it, there's a lot of these 15-minute cities everywhere in just about every neighborhood. This is Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. There was 8 malls. The blue ones are closed now. The one in the upper left corner is about to close. The one in the top can't pay the rent. The only one that's open is a town center. Why? So why do you think that is? So we're going to go from 8 malls to 1 mall, and that mall is a town center. So maybe the solution is, now I'm Express or anybody, you know, for that matter, I had 8 places I could put stores, now I have 1. But what about this? What if it was 15-minute cities? What if there was a city in Upper Arlington? What if there was a city in Bexley? What if there was a city in Hilliard and places like that where I could put smaller stores or edited stores and make a difference and at least have brand presence? So really quickly, we had double disruptors. You got to get local. And the 15-minute city is absolutely something to think about. I hope you guys get a chance to check it out. And indoor malls, like I said, I'm not going to talk about it that much, but I think that indoor malls, there's a whole thing about indoor malls, and it is not good. So I pulled this picture, and I just had to say, you know, for Cameron's sake, whatever happens to me in the rest of my life, I just want to have that smug look on my face somehow. I want to be the one that goes, yeah, that. You know, whatever you think about him, he's got that smug look, so I don't think he cares what you think about him. But anyway, this is a really great quote. I love this quote. If you are leaning away from the future will win every time. All right, you guys. Thank you very much. And that's the presentation if you want. Thank you very much.